Around the world, people have carved paths. Through places that were never meant to be crossed. Roads that cling to cliffs, where a single mistake means the end. Highways that cut through mountains, still shifting beneath them. Routes where the ground collapses, the weather turns without warning, and the margin for error disappears entirely. Every day, vehicles climb higher, push deeper, and move forward through terrain that resists every attempt to tame it. Because beyond these roads are places that depend on them. Communities that rely on them, lives that continue, no matter how dangerous the journey becomes. And nowhere is that more evident than in Turkey. High in northeastern Turkey, the road doesn't ease you in. It rises, sharp, immediate, unforgiving. The D915 cuts through the Pontic Mountains with a sequence of tight, stacked switchbacks that feel less like engineering and more like defiance. Some sections narrow to the point where vehicles cannot pass each other without one reversing. There are no safety nets, no wide shoulders, just rock on one side and empty space on the other. Built by Russian forces in the early 20th century, it was never meant to be comfortable. It was meant to move men and equipment across terrain that resists both. And none of that ever changed. Drivers climb slowly, often in first gear, correcting angles inch by inch. A single mistake doesn't lead to a close call. It ends your journey and your life. And yet locals still take this road, because beyond those turns are villages that rely on it. If the D915 road tests machines, the Sani Pass tests judgment. It climbs from South Africa into Lesotho, with gradients so steep that standard vehicles are not even permitted to attempt it. Four-wheel drive is not a recommendation. It is a requirement. The surface shifts constantly, gravel gives way to mud. Mud hardens into rock. Weather rewrites the road in hours. Fog blinds drivers without warning. And rain turns traction into guesswork. There are no barriers between the road and the drop. Just loose edges and gravity. But the pass is more than a challenge. It is a border, a lifeline, a route used daily by locals who cross between countries not for thrill, but for work, supplies, and survival. The risk is well understood, but so is the need. At first glance, it looks precise, orderly, designed. But be careful. Looks can be deceiving. Stelvio Pass winds through the Italian Alps with 48 numbered hairpin bends, each carved with intention. It is one of the highest paved roads in Europe, rising above 2,700 meters, where the air thins and engines strain. It invites confidence. But sometimes, confidence is where danger begins. Drivers come here expecting control, but the altitude slows reactions. The tight bends demand constant correction. A single lapse compounds quickly on a road that never truly straightens. Cyclists push themselves to exhaustion. Motorcyclists lean into curves that offer no forgiveness. Unlike the D915 in Turkey from earlier, this road appears civilized. But the margin for error is just as thin. Still, people come, because challenge has its own pull. Even when the cost is measured in just a few short seconds of misjudgment. Some roads are built for connection. This one was built out of fear. The Transfăgărășan cuts through Romania's Carpathian Mountains, climbing to over 2,000 meters with long curves, tunnels, and sudden drops. It looks almost theatrical, too dramatic to be practical. That's because it wasn't. Constructed in the 1970s under Nicolae Ceaușescu, it was designed as a military route in case of invasion. Thousands of tons of dynamite reshaped the mountains. Workers labored in high-altitude conditions, where mistakes were often fatal. Official records list dozens of deaths. Unofficial accounts suggest far more. Today, the road remains narrow, winding, and exposed to the same elements that made its construction so dangerous. Snow closes it for much of the year. Fog settles without warning, but it endures. Because once something like this exists, it becomes part of the landscape, no matter the cost it took to carve it out. In Pakistan, there's this one road that doesn't just cross mountains. It moves with them. The Karakoram Highway stretches through one of the most unstable regions on Earth. Landslides are not occasional hazards. They are constant events. Entire sections of road can disappear overnight, buried under rock and debris. In some areas, slope deformation reaches measurable rates year after year. The ground shifts, slowly, relentlessly. More than 200 landslides have already been documented along key sections, and new ones continue to form. The highway links Pakistan to China, making it a vital corridor for trade and infrastructure. It carries heavy traffic through terrain that resists permanence. Drivers navigate under cliffs that are still breaking apart. And yet, the road stays open, because shutting it down would isolate entire regions. And isolation here is a greater threat than the mountain itself. Whereas some roads challenge a driver's skills, this one challenges your ability to breathe. The Manali Highway stretches across northern India at elevations that average over 4,000 meters. It crosses multiple high passes, including Tanglang La, where oxygen levels drop significantly. Engines lose power. So do people. The road is open only part of the year. Snow blocks it for months, cutting off entire regions. When it reopens, the surface is unpredictable. Gravel, ice melt, and fast-moving streams cross the path. There are stretches where the road narrows to a single lane. No guardrails, no warning signs. Military convoys rely on it. So do locals transporting goods across Ladakh. At this altitude, even small problems become serious. A breakdown is not just an inconvenience, it becomes a question of time. But people still take it, because for half the year, it is the only way through. There are roads that feel dangerous, and then there are roads that seem impossible. The Kishtwar Killar road runs along the edge of the Chenab River Gorge. It is carved directly into vertical rock faces, with drops that stretch hundreds of meters below. There are no railings, no space to correct mistakes. In many sections, the road is barely wide enough for a single vehicle. Passing another car requires one driver to reverse along a cliff edge until a wider patch appears. Landslides are common. The surface is uneven, shifting between loose rock and dust. But this road connects remote communities that would otherwise remain cut off entirely. So vehicles move slowly, carefully, because the alternative is not safer. It is complete isolation. This road doesn't present one danger. It presents all of them. The Sichuan-Tibet highway stretches over 2,400 kilometers, crossing mountains, rivers, fault lines, glaciers, and permafrost zones. It passes through terrain shaped by tectonic movement. Where earthquakes and landslides are part of the environment. More than 100,000 workers built it in the 1950s. Thousands did not survive. The road winds through 13 mountains over 4,000 meters high. It crosses areas where snowstorms, avalanches, and rockfalls can occur at any time. Drivers face constant changes in elevation, temperature, and road conditions. It has been described as an encyclopedia of road disasters. Not because of exaggeration, but because every known hazard exists somewhere along it. Still, it remains in use because it connects Tibet to the rest of China. And without it, that connection weakens. From above, the Los Caracoles looks almost mathematical. A pattern repeated with precision. It consists of 29 tight hairpin turns climbing the Andes. The elevation gain is steep, and the turns are packed closely together. It demands constant braking, constant control. In winter, snow and ice make those same turns unpredictable. In summer, heat strains engines and braking systems. Trucks move slowly, often inching through each curve. There is no room for error, only repetition. And yet, this is a major trade route between Chile and Argentina. Goods pass through these turns every day. Because efficiency, in this case, outweighs comfort, and necessity overrides fear. On one side, the climb is gradual. On the other, it drops sharply. Paso de los Libertadores connects Chile and Argentina through the Andes, reaching elevations above 3,200 meters. The Chilean descent is lined with steep switchbacks that require constant braking and attention. The Cristo Redentor tunnel, over 3 kilometers long, cuts through the mountain itself. It simplified the crossing, but it did not remove the danger. Snowstorms close the pass regularly. Rockfalls remain a threat. At times, thousands of travelers have been stranded when weather conditions shifted suddenly. But traffic never truly stops, because this is one of the main corridors between two countries. And when it opens again, the flow resumes, as if nothing happened. At first, it feels controlled, measured, engineered. Trollstigen climbs through Norway's mountains with 11 hairpin bends and gradients reaching 10%. It is narrow, with limited passing space and surrounded by steep terrain. Waterfalls cut through the landscape. Rockfall zones remain active despite reinforcement efforts. The road closes during winter and can shut down without warning during heavy rain. Unlike others, this road is known for its beauty. But beauty doesn't remove risk. Drivers still need precision, still need awareness. And every year, thousands take the climb. Not because they must, but because they choose to face it. Higher than the Transfăgărășan, but quieter. The Transalpina reaches over 2,100 meters, crossing open alpine terrain where weather shifts quickly. Fog reduces visibility. Rain turns the surface slick. Snow can appear even outside winter months. The road stretches for nearly 150 kilometers, with long climbs and descents that demand endurance. It traces routes believed to date back to Roman times, later reinforced for military movement. But today, its danger comes from exposure. There are few barriers, few protections, just open mountain and changing conditions. People still drive it, because it offers a crossing that few others can match, even if the cost is constant vigilance. The name says more than the road ever could. Rohtang Pass rises to nearly 4,000 meters in the Himalayas. Its name translates to pile of corpses, a reference to the lives lost attempting to cross it long before modern roads existed. Today, it remains part of a critical route, connecting valleys that depend on it. Snow, avalanches, and landslides are constant threats. Meltwater turns sections into mud. Traffic congestion traps vehicles for hours in unstable conditions. There are no guardrails, only narrow paths and steep drops. Yet it stays busy, because it is a gateway. And for many, there is no other way through. Some roads are dangerous because of where they are. This one is dangerous because of how it was built. The Karakoram Highway stretches over 2,000 kilometers through Siberia, connecting remote regions under extreme conditions. Temperatures drop below -50 degrees Celsius in winter. The road is mostly gravel. Services are rare. Distances between settlements are vast. Built between 1932 and 1953 using forced labor, it earned the name Road of Bones. Due to the number of prisoners who died during its construction. Whether those bodies lie beneath the road is debated. But the history remains. Even today, breakdowns can be fatal, not from impact, but from exposure. Still, the road is used because it connects places that would otherwise remain unreachable. And in this region, distance is its own form of danger. At first glance, you think it's manageable. Long, remote, but stable. Then the conditions begin to change. The Dalton Highway stretches 666 kilometers through Alaska, much of it unpaved. It crosses tundra, mountains, and permafrost regions where the ground itself can shift. Truck traffic dominates the road, supplying oil fields in the north. Snow, ice, and strong winds create unpredictable conditions. Flooding can wash out sections entirely. Avalanches threaten higher elevations. There are long stretches with no services, no fuel, no help. If something goes wrong, you wait, or you survive long enough to be found. And still, it stays active because it supports an industry that depends on it. And in places like this, necessity always comes first. The places people choose to live often demand a price. And sometimes, that price is the road you take just to get there. In southwestern Colorado, the $1 Million Highway winds through the San Juan Mountains like it was carved without compromise. For about 25 miles between Silverton and Ouray, the road climbs above 11,000 feet, then drops sharply through a series of switchbacks that feel more like controlled falls than descents. There are no guardrails in many sections, just open air and a long way down. You drive it, and you start to understand why. Snowfall here can reach around 300 inches a year. Anything built on the edge would be buried or pushed aside, so the road stays bare and unforgiving. About 40 accidents happen here every year, with around 7 fatalities. And still, people drive it daily, not because they want to, but because this is the route that connects entire towns. Beauty is part of the deal. So is the risk. If the $1 Million Highway tests your nerves, the Trans-Labrador Highway tests your sense of isolation. Stretching over 1,100 kilometers through eastern Canada, this road cuts through wilderness so vast you can drive for hours without seeing another vehicle. No towns, no signal, just forest, rock, and sky. It's fully paved now, but that hasn't made it safe. In fact, it's made it faster. And that creates a different kind of danger. Moose collisions are common, and out here, hitting one at highway speed isn't just an accident. It can be fatal. You break down here, and you're on your own. Fuel stops are spaced hundreds of kilometers apart. Miss one, and you're calculating distances in a place where there's nothing to stop for. People still brave it because it's the only connection between remote communities. Out here, the danger isn't dramatic. It's quiet, like a thief in the night. Further north, the road doesn't just fight distance. it fights the climate itself. The E69 in northern Norway stretches toward the North Cape, one of the northernmost points you can reach by road in Europe. It runs about 129 kilometers, cutting through tunnels that dive nearly 700 feet below sea level before rising again into Arctic winds. In winter, parts of the road only open in convoys. You don't drive when you want. You drive when you're allowed. Snow, ice, and wind reduce visibility to almost nothing. A simple patch of black ice can turn a straight road into a slide with no recovery. People make the trip anyway, because this isn't just a road. It's the only way to reach the edge of the continent. Some roads don't disappear into isolation. They disappear into the ocean. The Atlantic Ocean Road connects a chain of small islands off Norway's coast. It's not long, but it doesn't need to be. The danger comes from exposure. Waves crash over the roadway during storms. Wind pushes vehicles sideways. And the bridges rise and fall in a way that feels unnatural, like the road itself is reacting to the sea beneath it. You drive across it on a calm day, and it feels almost peaceful. Then the weather turns, and suddenly you're not sure if the road belongs to land or water. People still cross it because it links communities that have no other direct route. Out here, the ocean sets the rules. Some roads don't just fight nature. They lose to it twice a day. The Passage du Gois stretches about 4.1 kilometers along the French coast, connecting the mainland to the island of Noirmoutier. At low tide, it's a road. At high tide, it's gone, completely submerged. You drive it, and timing becomes everything. Miss the window, and the ocean takes over. Warning towers stand along the route for those who misjudge it, offering a last chance to climb above the rising water. Even experienced drivers get caught. Cars are swallowed every year. Even so, more cars move through it daily, because when the water pulls back, the road is still there, waiting. Then there are roads that don't care if you're prepared. The Canning stock route runs over 1,700 kilometers through the Australian desert. It was built in 1910 to move cattle between remote regions, connecting a chain of 51 wells spaced a day's walk apart. Today, it's one of the longest and most isolated tracks on Earth. You don't drive this in a day. You plan for weeks. More than 900 sand dunes stand in your way, along with stretches of terrain that shift under your tires. There's no pavement, no easy recovery, and no quick exit. You break something out here, and the timeline changes from hours to days. People still take it on, not out of necessity anymore, but because it represents something rare, a place where distance still means something. Not all dangerous roads are remote. Some are dangerous because of what moves on them. BR 116 runs for over 4,300 kilometers through Brazil. Connecting major cities from north to south. It's one of the busiest highways in the country, packed with trucks. Many driven by people working long, exhausting shifts. Fatigue sets in, mistakes follow, sections of the road run along cliffs, with poor surfaces and unpredictable weather. Add in heavy traffic and minimal enforcement, and the margin for error disappears. Thousands die here every year, and yet it remains one of the most important transport routes in Brazil, because stopping isn't an option. Back in the mountains, the danger feels more personal. The Halsema Highway runs about 150 kilometers through northern Luzon, reaching elevations above 2,200 meters. It's narrow, winding, and in many places, still vulnerable to landslides. Rain turns the road slick, fog erases visibility, and the edges drop off without warning. You drive it during the rainy season, and you're not just watching the road, you're watching the mountains above you. Waiting to see what comes loose. Regardless, people use it every day because it's the only route farmers have to bring their crops down from the highlands. This isn't optional, it's survival. Then there are roads where the danger isn't isolation, it's density. Nawabpur Road in Old Dhaka stretches just 1 kilometer, but it feels longer. Rickshaws, carts, pedestrians, and vehicles all move through the same space. Often at the same time. There's no clear order, no real separation. You step into it, and you're immediately part of the flow, whether you want to be or not. Accidents happen constantly, not because of speed, but because of proximity. There's nowhere to go if something goes wrong. Still, it's one of the busiest commercial arteries in the city because everything passes through here. The Guoliang Tunnel in China is a road that looks like it shouldn't exist. Carved by hand through a mountain in the 1970s, this 1.2-kilometer tunnel clings to a cliff face. It's about 4 meters wide, barely enough for a single lane. There are over 30 openings cut into the rock. Exposing sheer drops just inches from the road. You drive through it, and every turn is blind. Every edge is final. Before this, villagers used a staircase carved into the mountain. The Guoliang Tunnel was the safer option, and that tells you everything you need to know. Higher up, the roads begin to disappear again. The routes leading into Nepal's Limi Valley climb above 5,000 meters, where the air itself becomes a challenge. The paths are narrow, often unpaved, and carved directly into the mountains. Landslides reshape them constantly. Snow blocks them without warning. You drive here, and you're not just managing terrain. You're managing altitude, oxygen drops, reaction times slow, and the edge is always there. Despite this, the road stays active, because entire villages depend on it for supplies. Some roads don't give you time to think. Highway 8B in the Peruvian Andes runs along cliffs at elevations of up to 14,000 feet. It's a one-lane road used for two-way traffic, filled with blind corners that force drivers to rely on sound more than sight. You round a bend and you honk, not as a courtesy, as a warning. Because if something is coming the other way, there's no room to share the road. Someone has to back up. And backing up near a cliff isn't a decision you take lightly. You drive it, and every second demands attention. Then there are roads that only exist for a moment. The Tibet to Contwoito Winter Road forms each year in northern Canada. stretching up to 600 kilometers across frozen lakes. Around 85% of it is built directly on ice. The season lasts about 2 months. That's it. Trucks weighing over 40 tons cross it, carrying supplies to remote mines. Speed is controlled carefully. Too fast, and you create waves under the ice. Too slow, and you risk other issues. And always, there's the same thought in the back of your mind. What if it breaks? Locals still use it, because without it, the region would rely entirely on air transport, and that's not sustainable. Some roads don't fail, they vanish. The N6 in Algeria runs through the Sahara, crossing into the Tanez-roofed region where the road dissolves into desert. Temperatures can reach 60 degrees Celsius. There are no clear markings, no landmarks, just sand stretching in every direction. You drive here, and navigation becomes the real challenge. Because losing the road doesn't mean stopping, it means disappearing. People still use it because it connects regions across the desert, because it always has, even when the path itself is gone. In the Congo Basin, the problem isn't heat or cold, it's everything else. Roads here turn into mud for months at a time. Heavy rain transforms tracks into trenches that swallow tires and stall engines. Trucks tip over, axles snap, and entire routes become impassable. A trip that should take days can stretch into weeks. You break down here, and help might not come, because there might not be anyone nearby, and yet these roads are used constantly. They carry timber, supplies, and everything else needed to keep remote communities running. Out here, the danger isn't sudden. It stretches, mile after mile, through terrain that doesn't forgive, through distances that leave no room for mistakes. On roads like these, survival isn't decided in a moment. It's decided over time, in the distance between help, in the weight of isolation. In the simple fact that turning back isn't always possible. The Karakoram Highway, the Dalton Highway, places where the road doesn't just test your skill, it tests your ability to endure. Because when something goes wrong out here, there are no second chances, only distance, only time, and the quiet understanding that once you start down these roads, you commit to seeing them through. Click here to discover more dangerous places on Earth.